This is a special edition of Dale Carter's America, the podcast. Mark McCloskey is joining us. He is he's running for the chance to replace Roy Blunt in the United States Senate. Mark, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a very crowded field.
It's a very crowded room here, actually.
Only the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's 21 people running for the Republican nomination.
Crazy.
And some of them I even know the names of, right?
Yeah, right. There are some that we do know the names of, most of them that we don't. So I guess this is your first foray into politics, right?
It is. I've never been a politician. I'm still not a politician, but I've never been a candidate for anything before.
Yeah. Why?
Why am I doing it now?
Why now?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but you know, back in June 28th and then again on July the 3rd of 2020, we got attacked by Antifa mobs. And the first time Patty and I held them off ourselves. The second time when they vowed to come back to kill us and burn down our house, and now coming back in the number of 1,000, we tried to get some private security, and nobody wanted to do it for fear of the bad press. We were referred to this entity out of Farmington, Missouri that does high-tech security all over the planet, a bunch of special forces guys. They'd gotten bad press over the Ferguson riots. They wouldn't do it. So I said, what the heck am I supposed to do? And the owner says, well, if I were you, I'd just take whatever I can't live without, put it in the vehicles, and abandon the house. I said, there's no effing way in heck we're going to do that, right? You know, we'll go down with the ship if we have to, but
Absolutely.
We're not going to abandon the house. Well, earlier in the week, I'd gotten a call from the White House. And the gentleman said, the president wants to express his support. If there's ever anything we can do for you, let us know. So when all else failed, I called that number back up, and I said, well, now's a pretty stinking good time, okay? And he gave me Mark Meadows' cell phone number, and I called up the chief of staff, and he went to work on it. Then I got on, called up Tucker Carlson, and he put us live on the air, you know, so I'm talking to Mark McCloskey. I can hear Mrs. McCloskey sobbing in the background. The mob's coming back tomorrow to kill them. And, you know, the
Crazy.
City police have been ordered to stand down. The state's not going to provide any support. And if we don't do something, they're going to get killed. Make a long story short, that Friday night, by the time the mob hit the gate, we had 6 ex-Navy SEALs. We had 10 secondary employment cops. We had the FBI light aircraft circling the top of the house. We had FBI snipers on the surrounding buildings. We had what we used to call in the Reagan administration, peace through superior firepower.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
That was a night that President Trump gave his Mount Rushmore address.
Right.
We didn't get a chance to hear it that night. We're a little preoccupied.
Mm-hmm.
But the next morning, July the 4th of 2020, when we woke up and we'd survived it, we hung out a big American flag out the front of the house, and we listened to the president's speech, and he talked about defeating Marxist extremism in this country. And the mainstream media reported on it and said that was the most divisive speech that a president could give.
I heard it.
And we looked at each other and we said, if defeating Marxist extremism in this country is divisive, like we're expected to live together in harmony with the people that seek to destroy our way of life, destroy our religion, take away our property, and eventually intern us, then there's something fundamentally wrong. If that's what the deep state and the swamp and the mainstream media thinks is appropriate, there's something fundamentally wrong in this country. We just made a personal pledge that day to put the rest of our lives on hold and do everything we could to pull back our freedoms and make this country free again.
What a great reason for a citizen of this country to run for elected office. You're not a career politician, right? As you said,
No.
You've never run for anything.
And, you know, the last thing I want to do is be a politician. The last thing I want to do is be a senator, but somebody's got to do it. And it's, as I said in the TV commercial I was running a couple of weeks ago, they just came knocking on the wrong damn door. I've been an ardent anti-communist my whole life. My dad was too. He was a member of the John Birch Society. My mom was president of the largest Republican club in the country back in the 70s and 80s. And this is kind of what if you're asking for the perfect storm of coincidence that mob should attack my house and now give me the voice I have to go out there and wake the people up and say, look, if we don't fix this country right now, I mean, some of the people running against me will talk about how, you know, we've got to save this country for our children and grandchildren. No, we got to save this country right now, this year. If we don't do something now, there won't be a country 18 months from now.
No, there's such a disconnect going on right now in the country, too. And it led us to Joe Biden. It led us to the problems we have now. I wonder what would happen if you were going through what you went through when you made that call to the White House, or actually the White House called you.
Yeah, White House called me.
I doubt Joey B would be calling you.
No, you know, and Turning Point came down and did a short commercial for the president in the fall of 2020, and what we said then is just absolutely true. I mean, it's one of the reasons we've been big Trump fans forever. I mean, on my desk is a framed photograph of my now 32-year-old daughter when she was 9 meeting Donald Trump up in Trump Tower. And so we've been big Trump supporters from the get-go. But the bottom line is, we both said this, the President of the United States has got better things to do than think about a couple of nobody lawyers in the city of St. Louis, yet he took his time and his effort to make sure that we were okay. We couldn't think of any better way to repay him than to go to work for him and campaign for him all over.
Well, the media made a big deal out of these were mostly peaceful protests as cities were burning behind them, right?
Well, you got to put it in context. In the city of St. Louis, on the night of June the 1st and June the 2nd of 2020, downtown St. Louis burned. 4 police officers were shot. Retired police captain David Dorn was murdered in his secondary employment about a half a mile from my house. And in the ensuing weeks, more and more pillage happened closer and closer to my house and my office building, where more and more businesses were boarded up and smashed and looted. And we just made a decision that if it came our direction, we weren't going to put up with it. We weren't going to take it laying down. And the nice thing about living in a city like St. Louis, where your George Soros-funded prosecutor doesn't prosecute crime but prosecutes ordinary citizens, criminals get to advertise their crimes in advance. And this Antifa organization headed by Cori Bush put out a flyer saying they're going to have a mob action in our area and when they're going to do it. So since they like to burn stuff and there's stuff in our house, like including us, so we didn't want to have burned, we put out a bunch of fire extinguishers around the house.
Yeah.
And because they like to shoot people, we put a bunch of guns around the house. And then when the mob hit the gate and tore it down and started surging in, the first thing I did was I stood out in the corner of my porch and said what I always describe as the 2 most racist, white supremacist words known in the English language. I said private property, right? And being communists, that pissed them off, and they start storming in ever so much more so. Well, Patty goes in to call 911, and I reached around the corner where I had a stage and grabbed my AR-15.
Yeah.
And that, as they say, was that. So.
I mean, it's all about the Second Amendment. That's why the Second Amendment's in the Constitution, so you can protect your property, right?
Absolutely. The Second Amendment isn't about, no offense, sleepy Uncle Joe. It's not about shooting deer in Kevlar vests. Second Amendment is about not allowing the central government to have a monopoly on power.
Exactly.
And that's, when you've got a couple of 100 million armed American citizens, the government has to think about that before they start trying to impose. But the problem is that I call the COVID-19 lockdowns the final exam on American freedom. I always figured that at some point in our lives, FEMA would create some kind of faux emergency and declare martial law and put us all under house arrest and say we couldn't go out, couldn't go to work, couldn't go to school, couldn't go to church. But I figured they'd have to put a gun to our head to make us comply. And then 2 years and 3 months ago, the government just asked, and everybody did it, even if it cost your livelihood, your life savings, your business, even if you couldn't see your own parents or grandparents pass away in a nursing home. Think about the people that had to die alone, people that had their family excluded. Think about guys who couldn't watch the birth of their own children.
Right.
And everybody just did it. There wasn't protest in the street. There wasn't rioting. There was nothing. What more proof could the powers that be have of how absolutely cowed the American people have become other than the fact that everybody just complied? And that was the most shocking thing. I've been predicting this, talking about this for decades. And when they announced the COVID-19 lockdowns, my daughter called up and said, "Is this it? Is this the end that you've always been predicting?" I said, "No, I think it's just going to be a test. They're going to see how much they can get away with, because then the next time, which I think is approaching rapidly, that'll be the final attempt."
Well, a turning point for our country is coming up with the midterm election. And Kurt and I on the podcast, we talk about this all the time. We try and cut through the personalities like Trump and get to the policies that'll turn this thing around. And, one of the things that we talk about is the Democrats are running toward the cliff at light speed, but when the Republicans have been in power, they're running toward the cliff at the speed limit.
Yeah.
The destination is still the same. So if you get elected, first of all, it's going to be keeping a seat Republican. It's not flipping a seat. We need to flip some seats in the Senate.
Which is interesting, because one of my primary opponents is always talking about this is a key to retaking the majority in the Senate. No, it's the key to keeping an equal Senate. Right. Some other states they can flip. This state, we're just saving our Republican seat.
Yeah. So if we get the majority in the House, which I think is all but a certainty, by a wide margin, I mean, if the polls are correct, and hopefully we can flip the Senate, that's going to be a little bit harder. And wouldn't it be nice if it got to a 60-vote majority where, the filibuster wouldn't be an issue? But if we do all those things, what then?
Well, the first thing is, and people ask me that question all the time, what good will it do to elect you to the Senate, just one more conservative senator? Well, the answer to that is, there'll be folks like me and Rand Paul and Mike Lee and Kennedy and sometimes Ted Cruz, although not predictably these days. We'll never even make up a majority of the Republicans in the Senate. But what we can do is make up a majority of the voices that the American people hear, because the power is in the American people. The power isn't in D.C. If enough people stand up and refuse to be intimidated, then the government can't do anything about it. And so the first thing we do is we start making ourselves known. Here's what has struck me from the get-go. Where the heck is the outrage? What you said about the Republicans moving towards that cliff just at a different speed than the Democrats, it's all true. But think about this. When the President of the United States announces completely unconstitutional things that are antithetical to the government of the United States, like a disinformation governance board, how come there are not 50 Republican senators and all the Republican congressmen standing on the steps of the Capitol building screaming in outrage? This cannot happen in the United States of America. This cannot happen in a country with the First Amendment. Cannot happen with a country which was created from scratch for the sole purpose of protecting the people from the power of government rather than giving the government power over the people. But you don't hear it. It's just crickets.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of everybody in politics, whether they've got an R behind their name or a D behind their name, are looking for the same thing. The politicians are looking to get reelected, taking that next step up the ladder, and the money, the lobbyists, the people that put them there are always looking for the same thing, and that's more control, more control, more control.
Yeah. We had the Convention of States person from Kansas on. Are you familiar with the Convention of States?
Absolutely.
You're not a career politician, and we talk about it on both sides. This is not just bashing the Democrats. We talk about Republicans a lot too. Chuck Grassley, in Iowa, was just nominated for an 8th term to the Senate.
Yeah.
He turns 89 years old in September.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on both sides. And we've got to move away. In my view, we've got to move away from the career politicians, get folks like you in there who you're running for your own reasons. You want to get in there and fix things. And I assume, you've got a thriving legal career you want to get back to.
Yeah, and I'll be 66 years old when I take my seat in the Senate on January the 3rd of 2023. I'll be 72 when my first term's over. And there won't be any second term, because the last thing this country needs is a few more senile old white guys out there running the world. And, you look at it. You look at Nancy Pelosi. How old is she? You look at Joe Biden. How old is she? You look at Chuck Schumer. How old is he? You look at, I hate to say it, but, my greatest hope for the future is Donald Trump, but he'll be 79 years old when he assumes the presidency the next time. And, the healthiest guys in the world at 79, you got to always be a little concerned.
Yeah.
And, here's a real world. We were down at CPAC, 3 months ago, as far away from the president as I am from my wife over in the corner there, and he stood up for 90 minutes without notes and had the entire room on their feet. He is so sharp. He's 10 years older than me. He's got 5 times my energy. Yeah. He's just an amazing guy.
And you're a Trump supporter. I get that. But are we ready for a change in guard? A younger, a Ron DeSantis type?
Well, I tell you what the real change needs to be. The real change needs to be people that aren't there for the sole purpose of being there.
Well, that's true.
If you look at people running for Senate, you look at people running for Congress, what they want most in the world is to get elected.
And reelected.
And reelected. and they almost never talk about policy. Or you got guys, and I'll go ahead and say this. We have 43 days till the primary, so the gloves need to come off.
Sure.
But you got guys like Eric Schmidt, who's now being this champion of the people and filing every lawsuit that'll get him on the front page of the paper. But when he was in the Missouri Senate, I've heard this from 2 different United States congressmen, when he was in the Missouri Senate, everybody called him the 9th Democrat. And he is now saying, I was the first person in the country to sue China. Well, he did sue China, never got China served. That lawsuit has gone absolutely nowhere. But when he was in the Missouri Senate, he voted to give China a $480 million transportation hub in the city of St. Louis. And he also voted to allow the Chinese to buy Missouri farmland. So his positions changed when he had a new stepladder to step up. Same thing with Eric Greitens, who was a Democrat until 2015, who in 2009 bought 2 websites, one saying Eric Greitens for Senate and one saying Eric Greitens for President, as a Democrat. And he used to work for George Soros and all these people he's now blasting, but nobody ever calls him on the carpet in that. And then you've got the 2 long-term congressmen. You got Vicky Hartzler and you got Billy Long. Now, they're both very nice people. I like them both. Billy particularly is a friend of mine. But 12 years in Congress, nobody ever heard his name. Same with Vicky Hartzler. Nobody ever heard her name until they decided to run for the Senate. Now all of a sudden, they're supposed to be our best hope for the future. When Josh Hawley endorsed Vicky Hartzler, I said to everybody who would listen, I said, I like Josh, but he now has the unenviable task of trying to convince people that somebody they've never heard of before is now our best hope for the future. I mean, if you're going to distinguish yourself, 12 years was a pretty long time to not do so.
Yeah.
And so those are the competition. But these people really, really want to get elected to the Senate because they really, really want to be a senator. They don't necessarily really, really want to risk everything to save this country or to pull our freedoms back. I start every presentation now by saying that this country is in a civil war right now, that the people in charge of this country hate our Constitution. They hate our democratic republic. They're doing everything they can. On March 21st of this year, Joe Biden said it while addressing the business luncheon. He said, we need to use this war in Ukraine as an inflection point. He says, inflection points like this only come around every 3 or 4 generations. What we need to do is going to be a new world order, and we need to lead it. And that's what all this is about, single world, socialist government. They've been building it since you and I were kids. They've been moving constantly to the left. And the problem is you got the Democrats that move 20 steps to the left, and then you got Mitch McConnell that moves 19 steps to the left to meet them halfway. And then the Democrats move 20 steps further to the left, and Mitch McConnell moves 19 steps to the left.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We got a clear house. You go up there with people that are saying, look, this is our country. We want it back. And people that are really willing to risk everything. They're, when I stood on the front porch with my AR and my wife out there with that dumbass little Brico pistol, I mean, we were facing 350 angry people.
Right.
They were armed. They're wearing body armor. They're screaming death and arson and rape. And we stood out there by ourselves. And, that's, if I'm willing to stand up to that mob and at the risk of life and my reputation and my law license, which, of course, everything's come under attack.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think there's another person out there. And you've got this I'll go ahead and say it on there, this pussy poser, Eric Greitens, who never shows up for anything. He's afraid to debate anybody, and he'll only go to events where he's sure that nobody will ask him any personal questions, and he can control the environment. And now he puts, I don't know if you saw his new commercial today, where he's kicking in a door and flash banging it with some special forces kinds of guys.
I have not seen that, but I'm not shocked.
And calling it, you can get your rhino hunting license, right? And I mean, it's just such BS, because here's a guy, he says he's the only Donald J. Trump, America First, MAGA candidate. Well, I got news for you. I was on the Trump campaign. I didn't see him on that Team Trump bus.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've pulled his donation records. He's never given a penny to President Trump. In fact, his entire life, he's given a total of $700.25 to anybody. I mean, and this is a guy that is out there campaigning as a big Donald Trump supporter. What's he been doing? He's been unemployed since he resigned the governorship in 2018. I didn't see him out there doing anything for President Trump when we were doing 7 rallies a day on behalf of the president.
Yeah.
Where was he? So anyway, I guess the bottom line is, at some point you got to cut through the BS, and you got to find people that are really willing to go up there. I mean, when the COVID lockdowns first hit, I quoted Patrick Henry on my Facebook page. So, give me liberty or give me death. And that's what this country is about. And people need to be ready to recognize that and act on it and save this country and pull it back, because, ladies and gentlemen, the left has been working on this single world socialist government. What we call, what Klaus Schwab calls a great reset, used to be called the Communist International. But that's what it's all about. And that's what they're heading forward. And, I'll digress. I don't know how much time I've got.
Open-ended.
All right. Think about the World Health Organization, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, the World Health Organization, President Trump took us out. Joe Biden put us right back in. Who's the director of the World Health Organization? It's a guy named Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. He's a Stalinist. He's a communist. He used to be with the Tigray People's Liberation Front of Ethiopia, a terrorist communist organization. He wanted to have Robert Mugabe, the butcher of Rhodesia, be the goodwill ambassador for health. Thank God Robert Mugabe's now dead, so that communist butcher can no longer affect us. But the Biden administration not only put us back in this World Health Organization run by these vicious, murdering communists, but his administration has rewritten the rules for the Global Pandemic Treaty to eliminate member states' ability to veto or override the World Health Organization. Part of the things that the World Health Organization in their global pandemic treaty want to have is information and disinformation control over the entire world, and mandates that each member nation create an enforcement authority, a police force, right? Directed not by the member nations. In fact, the member nations, at the insistence of the Biden administration, are prohibited from exercising power over the police force in their own country to enforce World Health Organization rules, which will determine your ability to travel, your ability to get medication, research and development, not based on need, but based on equity. And this is what our government, our current government, is insisting upon, that we cede our sovereignty to this thing run by these ardent communists. You got to ask yourself, why in the world would the government of the United States want us to participate in, let alone ceding power to, a communist-led world dominance organization? And it's just because that's their goal. The people in charge of this country today see the model of Red China and the Soviet Union as an aspiration.
I don't. And
I don't either.
And you don't either. Is that where this disinformation trial balloon came from?
Well, you know.
To try and participate in that?
Well, here's the thing, right? Our Department of Justice has announced that white conservatives are the greatest threat to the freedom of this country, greatest threat to the future of this country. The DOJ has established a task force to identify and track people that resist authority. What do we call that, you know?
Yeah.
And then the FBI, of course, has created a task force to identify and track parents that have the gall to want to have some influence in their kids' education, right, and call them domestic terrorists. Ted Cruz called them, the January 6ers, terrorists. Terrorist is a term of independent legal significance. If you're a terrorist, you're not entitled to civil rights. If you're a terrorist, you're not entitled to habeas corpus. Look at those poor sons of guns rotting away in solitary confinement cells in D.C. on charges of trespass or parading without a license or no charges at all. Those people are political prisoners. Once again, where's the outrage? How come there are not 50 Republican senators and every Republican member of Congress standing on the Capitol steps screaming, you can't have political prisoners in a free, democratic republic. If we have political prisoners, we're no longer a free country. But you don't hear a single person say that. Why? Because they're afraid of getting Peter Navarro'd, right?
Right.
Or Roger Stone or Mike Flynn, right? Mm-hmm. They're afraid of people showing up in their house at 4:30 in the morning with flashbang grenades and riot gear and the CNN reporters in the background, because we live in this tyrannical government where we're now experiencing, right now, as you and I are speaking, where this country is going through a coup by subpoena, that the powers that be are trying to eliminate everybody who may be a political threat in the next presidential election cycle. And they're hoping and hoping and hoping that they can get President Trump indicted and convicted of something which would preclude him under the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, it's their only hope.
It's their only hope.
Yep, January 6th. We talk about that a lot. Sounds like you're a guy who would shake things up.
I would try my darndest, I can tell you that.
Mark McCLOSKEY, August 2nd, that's when the primary is.
That's it, August the 2nd. You know, and we don't have any backing by out-of-state billionaires or even in-state billionaires, or Mitch McConnell, obviously. And so I don't have the money at this point to out-commercial everybody else. And the two guys that claim they're leading this race, right, Eric Schmidt and Eric Greitens, don't show up anyplace. And they're doing the Biden campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're gonna spend their billionaire big bucks. Yeah, I heard your interview with Billy Long. That's the phrase he likes to use. Billionaire big bucks to buy everybody's vote. The people in this state should be mortally offended by the fact that the people that claim to be leading this race have absolute disdain for the voters. They don't want to be out there.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk to them. They don't want to find out what the voters want. They think that with the application of millions of dollars of TV advertising, they can buy every vote they need to win.
Yeah. Well, we need to shake things up. I think America, to use your term, is pissed off at this point. Yeah. And we're going to, I mean, this midterm, we started this podcast on Inauguration Day when Joe Biden was inaugurated. And we started by going through the Constitution, you know, brick by brick. This is what America is supposed to be about. We wanted to give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt, and yet at every turn, he's made the wrong decision.
Or he's made the right decision for him. Everybody else in this campaign is talking about how incompetent Joe Biden is, and he's a senile old poop, which of course he is, and how Kamala Harris is the dumbest human being ever elected to high office, which of course she is, but that's got nothing to do with how this country is being run. Every one of these things, which the even Fox and the conservative media talks about Biden's incompetence, the open border, inflation, the loss of energy independence, the gas price, the debacle in Afghanistan, the war now in Ukraine and the attempt, the massive propaganda push by every single network to get us involved in a hot war with Russia. All these things aren't the result of incompetence or buffoonery. They're all a part of two things. One, daily crises du jour to distract you from the big picture. Secondly, to cripple the economy, to dispirit the American people, the lawlessness in the streets to make people afraid. What do frightened, hungry, impoverished people want? They want the government to fix their problems for them. And so the more the central government can crush us down and make us suffer, and look at what they make go away. Toilet paper, right? Anybody ever explain to you why toilet paper became scarce during COVID? Now it's baby formula, cat food. Try to find cat food on your store shelves. They know where people live in their hearts, and that's how they try to punish us. Gas prices, toilet paper, baby formula. If you think people are willing to give up their civil rights over COVID, think how quickly people would give up their civil rights if their babies start to starve.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what all this is about. Here we are in America, the breadbasket of the world, and our government is preparing us for food shortages.
Crazy.
It's just 2 years ago you wouldn't have thought it was possible.
Yep.
Or you just other stuff, just on the decay, the intentional destruction of our moral framework. 2 years ago, did you ever think we'd be talking about whether or not men with testicles should be able to participate as women in sports?
I didn't, but it's led to some amusing podcasts that we've done for sure.
I'll bet it has. But there's certain things you just can't talk about. For example, did you ever hear anybody ask Bruce Jenner if he still has his testicles, right? If you ask that question, you're a transphobe, right? They have whole swaths of political debate that you're not allowed to touch,
right?
Because they've got catchphrases, and everybody out there, I don't want to be a transphobe. Oh, I won't get invited to the next party in Hollywood. They will ostracize me in Martha's Vineyard, right?
Oh, boy.
And so you don't ask that question.
I don't see you being a K Street Republican if you get elected, for sure. Pleasure to talk to you. I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, thank you. And
August 2nd.
I'm going to put in a plug. McCloskey for Senate. That's FOR McCloskey for Senate.com. McCloskey spelled MCCLOSKEY for FOR Senate.com. I need all the help I can get. I get 3/4 taped to a piece of cardboard with a note saying, I love you, but this is all I can afford. Those are the folks I want to represent.
All right. Well, I'm sure Kurt will put a nice graphic up, and they'll have that up for the entire podcast. He's really good at stuff like that.
Well, I'll bet he is. This shirt saves lives.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Take
Good
care.
luck.
Thank you.